you know, The Wire, you always expanded throughout each season of The Wire. Why did you decide to include newspapers in the final season?
It made sense to end on a reflection on the state of the media, because that last season was arguing, in effect, if we've gotten anything right in the first 4 seasons about what's gone on in the rest of our society in terms of urban culture, in terms of policing, the drug war, public education, politics. What is it that we were paying attention to at this critical moment over the last decade or so in America, when things were really leaving the track in terms of process and systemic failure? What were we looking at? What were we paying attention to? And the argument we were making was the highest end of journalism had become less ambitious, less willing to look at the systemic, less willing to ask the why of that journalism is supposed to ask. I mean, without the why are things this way? Journalism is barely an adult game. You know, who, what, when, where, how. You know, a smart 14-year-old can handle that stuff. The why is what makes it an adult endeavor. And our critique was that journalism had ceased to really look at the things that were systemically going wrong in America.
Specifically dealing with newspapers, and of course your background as a newspaper journalist, you started the season with a meeting talking about how the papers and the reporters were going to have to do more with less. Is the argument that they haven't done more with less? Can they do more?
Nobody does more with less. You do less with less. That's why you call it less. That is the arrogance and the vanity of managers who are cheating the product and pretending otherwise. That's pure profit taking. You know, I was part of a series of buyouts in the 90s, before the internet arrived, before the internet was confronting newspapering, where reporters were being asked to leave in exchange for salary as a means of maximizing profit. You know, the Baltimore Sun, when it had the buyouts that I took, was making 37.5% profit. We know this now because now that the Tribune Company's bankrupt, we can look at the books. 37.5% profit a year, and they were trimming from 500 to 400 bodies in the newsroom for no other reason than to make more money. That's how you make 37.5% profit. But what they were doing was cutting their own throats. Instead of building something that was more essential to readers, something that you couldn't do without, something that when the internet hit, you could charge online, they were building something inferior. It was basically Detroit in the 70s. They were making Chevy Vegas and Gremlins and Pacers and pretending that nobody would ever make a car that Americans would turn to. The Nissan and Toyota and the Germans would never arrive with a comparative product.
And now these companies are trying to squeeze out every dollar they can just to pay off the debt that they've incurred.
It's slow suicide. Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, what has happened is market-based, laissez-faire economics, that kind of capitalism has shown us that it can chase short-term profits while cutting the throat of the economy itself. That's what the mortgage bubble is. That's the way Wall Street has behaved on every level. Why should what it did with media consolidation and profit-taking be any different? That's what they did with newspapers. They destroyed their own industry. They had contempt for their own product. They put inferior stuff out there. And then they're shocked when people easily turn away. It's embarrassing to me. And I say this with no schadenfreude. I mean, this is not a guy who, just because I got a TV gig, I'm happy. I'm heartbroken over what's happened with newspapers. And ultimately, ultimately what Americans have to consider is that both things are true. The internet is a real threat to first-rate, first-line journalism. It's not producing that. It's producing commentary and froth. Some of it very good, but it's not producing first-generation reporting. And it really is a threat because the parasite is killing the host by using this stuff for free and by providing it for free. But at the same time, the internet is not the only villain here. The industry itself is complicit in having leaned into the punch. by having cut their own throats and having cut their own quality in the decades prior.
And yet it's not just a danger to journalism itself. You said it endangers the republic, it endangers our entire
Absolutely.
country. But why don't people seem to get that? Why is it, why are people
Well,
slow to
first of
react?
all, if you look at a lot of the commentary, particularly from bloggers, there's a lot of, it's very American to hate your local newspaper, to despise them, even when they do their job, almost especially when they do their job. Newspapers are not built to be liked. They're built to be almost indifferent on some level to the desires of their readers. I am not somebody who believes journalism should solicit or should ever solicit the concerns, the political concerns of its clientele. They should report on what they should report and let the chips fall where they may. That usually leaves everybody a little bit mad at your local newspaper. You're mad if you're a conservative by political dint. You're mad if you're a liberal. You're mad if you're a Zionist. You're mad if you're an anti-Zionist. You're mad if you supported this guy. You're mad if you supported that guy. A newspaper should leave everybody a little bit mad. And now that newspapers are dying, a lot of that contempt is coming at them in almost a perfectly naive way, as if the world's going to get better when they're gone, as if bloggers and new media are going to fill the gaps of conscientious beat reporting and investigative reporting. They haven't yet. This is not to say there aren't here and there moments of good journalism in new media, but it's not consistent. And you don't cover stuff institutionally and systemically unless somebody's being paid as a professional to cover that beat day in and day out, to react to daily events, to look at trends, to work sources. You know, I can't find out what's going on in the Baltimore City Police Department unless a beat reporter is there and doing the work every day. Maybe 2 or 3 beat reporters competing against each other. And people believe that somehow that unpaid bloggers are going to achieve this, and I think they're just hallucinating. I think it's going to be an incredible hole in our civic structure when newspapers aren't there.
This was the subject of a Washington Post op-ed that you wrote, specifically talking about the lack of crime beat and police beat reporting. What are people missing in their cities because they're not getting that regular attention?
Well, you know, what happened was there was a police shooting in Baltimore, and it seemed to have some questions that needed to be answered. And in particular, the police department was refusing to reveal the identity of the officer that shot and killed a citizen. I found this to be a remarkable stance for government to take, that we can shoot a citizen and we'll tell you when it's relevant for you to know the name of the officer who did this. That could only occur where media is retrenching, where it's retreating, where there is no longer a deterrent to institutional cover your ass. You know, where nobody is challenging government to do its